Taylor Holmes here from THiNC, your favorite little itty bitty indie movie blog location. I know you don't go anywhere else for movies, and that is why I love you so much. All right, today I want to talk a little bit about the pink cloud. I am still unclear what I think of this movie, even after finishing yesterday and thinking about it all night, having a pink cloud drift through my brain as I slept. And but I was apparently intrigued enough by it to think about it for the last 18 hours. It's a fascinating little story. It's a very intriguing concept, but I want to view it through two lenses. One, there was no COVID pandemic. I'm sure if you've watched the movie, the beginning of the movie shows a sign that says this was filmed in 2017, 2019, I think. So if we look at the pink cloud specifically through this lens of COVID-19 didn't happen, they came up with the idea of this movie prior to COVID-19. They had no idea COVID-19 was coming, and that 2 years of chaos and pandemic and sickness and death and isolationism was about to happen. So there's that, like, prior to pandemic, and then there's another lens of thinking about it post-pandemic, because the same people that created the movie prior to the pandemic and didn't think of it also released the movie after knowing about it. So while they didn't know, they still released it knowing full well that a pandemic had occurred, right? It just came out. The pink cloud just came out. I wonder, like, I've been waiting for this movie for over a year. I don't know why it caught me as so important a movie, or why I wanted it. It just looked good to me. And an international, indie, small budget, clever premise. That I was curious. I was curious what was going to happen, and now that it's out, like, grappling with it is really interesting to me. All right, so let's think about it post-pandemic first. So the movie is intriguing in that it's basically a retelling of our lives for the last 2 years. There's whoever you were stuck with. There were some people that were stuck with flatmates they didn't like, and stuck with roommates they didn't even know. This happened, right? This occurred to people, which seems a little extreme to me. The cloud wasn't, like, COVID wasn't a cloud that will kill you if you step out, but there was this feeling like it might, right? There's this feeling like it could. So to think through that and to really, wow, you see these, in the movie, you see these shots of security cameras of people killing each other in a convenience store. But that makes sense because they just kind of, they're stealing from each other, but they've been stuck with each other for months and months. We don't have a really good sense of time here. We don't have a good feeling for, the stages of or months. Like, there's no calendar flipping or anything. We see a kid get born and grow, and so we know it's a long time. Like, what, 10 years, 15 years? Like, I don't know. I don't know how long it took them to decide to have a kid. I don't know. And the kid is, 8 or something at the end of the movie. I don't know, 7. So we're talking 10 years. Let's call it 10 years. And that's crazy, right? To put up with a pandemic for 10 years and to to grapple with it. And the movie is obviously science fiction at its most extreme in that we're dealing with obviously fantasy, right? Like the only way this movie can continue or play out the way it did was through the couple days in or months in, like we get no period of time. Very soon after the pink cloud arrives, all the houses get these tubes, like myth, like just fantasy, literal fakeness. But it's a fascinating exercise in trying to grapple with what would happen if we were trapped like this, and what would happen if this really was how it went down in a pandemic. I had a hard time watching it though, knowing about the pandemic, thinking about the pandemic, knowing what my family had gone through, what many families have gone through, the hundreds of thousands of people who have died in America alone, let alone the rest of the world. That was hard, right? It was difficult. It was like that was my life, right? That was like there were a year and a half, 2 years where my family did not go to restaurants, to movies, and you know me, I'm a movie guy, right? Like not going to the movie theater is murderous. So that was really difficult. So post-pandemic, the movie makers that released it post-pandemic knew full well that this was true to our lives, and there were people who committed suicide under the strain of the pandemic, and there were different stages of it, right? It seemed to come and go, and in the pink cloud, the cloud shifts colors to green, and then to white and blue, and then back to pink again, right? Like it's like a false truth, and the fact that we don't know about the time. There's a cut where she's super excited, and they're gonna go to the beach, right? And then maybe not, and then and there's no attempt at scientific discovery in this movie, because that's not what this movie is about. There was no one tried to put a glad bag over their head and go out, right? No one tried to create a NASA suit that allowed them to traverse the street, right? No one asked questions like why the cloud didn't come through the windows, other than why doesn't it come through the window? I mean, it was pretty thin on the science, right? But that's beside the point. That's irrelevant. Although I am curious to know how the cloud works, right? So it acted like a pandemic. It was this mysterious force, this will that was killing people arbitrarily if they stepped outside, and dealing with the repercussions and the impacts of staying inside, having a child, trying to raise this child, and the child liking the cloud, and 100 reasons for liking the cloud, right? It's a very interesting concept. Like, what would have happened if the pandemic went for 10 years instead of 2? And what happens for those children that are born during the pandemic, and 5 years in, they don't want to go out to the park. That seems scary to them, right? That's a fascinating concept. But that's the lesser, that's the part I liked least about the movie. A mirror on our own lives. I didn't like that part. The part I did like was thinking about humans considering what life would be like in a world where we couldn't leave. And what is it that they were trying to say? Because obviously they didn't know about the pandemic that was coming. And you think about what it might be grappling with. I have a couple thoughts, but the main one, because I'm already running long on my time already on this video, the main thought that I have, that I think this movie is about, and the movie makers are trying to play with or grapple with, is our society's, or the global community's, isolationist tendencies. I think that's what they're trying to play with and to spin, right, and consider. Why? Well, because of technology. Technology has created us as isolationist beings. We get the social interactions on our phones, on our computers. We can interact with our friends without ever seeing them. We can go home at dinner and eat dinner and not interact with the people next to us. It's a but it's a bit of a problem, right? My family doesn't allow our kids to pick up their phones at dinner, but still it happens, right? Still it happens. I do it. But I think it's grappling with that. If you look back through history, not to get religious really fast, but if you look back through history in the Bible, there's the story of the prodigal son. The prodigal son is the story of a kid who says, "Give me my money, and I'm going to leave." The big reason why that is such an impactful story, if you know that story, he goes off and loses all the money, and he starts feeding the pigs and working jobs, and he eats what the pigs eat. And eventually he comes back, and the father returns him, right? The big reason that was such a massive, horrifying story for the father was simply because he lived in community where literally the father and mother, when he prepared a place for his son and his daughter-in-law, they built it onto the side of their house. They literally tacked a room onto the side of their house. And the father and mother and the son, the bride and the groom, they would all work together to provide for that family, for them, for themselves, for their kids and their kids' kids, right? And it was, and as the elderly, aged, they would care for each other. And to have a son walk off and leave community, to leave, you were obviously a horrible parent. You were a failure as a parent, right? So this social network of community, of physical beings interacting with each other physically, was broken. This idea was broken, right? If you turn the corner and look at it's only been in the last 50 years that this idea of the single wage earner, like the guy, the dad, the father of the family will go and earn, and the wife will take care of the house, right? That's a myth too. We can get onto that in another day, but that's not the way society has been for millennia, right? It has been a family working together, the mother, the father, the sons, the daughter, right? All working together to provide what the family needs. Sure, maybe the father does a trade or something that is the most significant thing, and everybody helps with that, or whatever it might be, but all of the family works in community, right? We're seeing in the last 10, 20, 30 years a break in all of these social norms and these mores of normality, of what earning a living looks like, or the definition of success looks like. And I think the movie really leans into that. Even in the very beginning, it was like, well, how does a chiropractor earn a living at a remove? Like, so he picks up a different trade. He learns a new skill. The movie doesn't really delve into that much, but he becomes isolationist, right? He deals with it, and it's not even an issue. He just does something else, like blogging or something, which earns nowhere near enough money. But trust me on that. But bottom line, it's a fascinating concept to watch as we these people are trying to grapple with this isolation, and some of them embrace it. And we saw that in the pandemic. Some people, this was their heaven, right? Not having to go to Christmas parties, not having to go out to potlucks at church, or whatever your social norms were, like having those just immediately stop, like that. Everyone just was like, that's not worth the risk. and all of those social things stopping. So I think it's a very interesting, concept to look at a society that is literally and willfully walking into their home and never coming out. I used to say that the number one evil towards social community norms was the garage door opener. People would drive into their garage, the garage door would close, and it would eat the human alive, and they would stay in there, and then they would open the garage door, and then they would move in their car, and then the garage door would close, right? There was no social bonding in the neighborhood, right, because the garage door ate the humans. This is similar, right? Technology has eaten each of us individually. We prefer the instant gratification and feedback of likes, follows, and that social commentary of interacting online. I mean, our community is not without blame, right? The chats that we have on Discord, the chats we have on the website. It's not. I'm not. I'm throwing stones, but they're coming at me too, right? So it's a fascinating. The Pink Cloud, as far as an entertainment goes, that wasn't great. I didn't like it. It was hurtful. It hurt like the memories that I have of COVID. It kind of ripped open the wound that was COVID and my experiences of that. And so I wasn't a fan. But as far as a philosophical treatise on life and isolationism and our tendencies to retract and withdraw that have only been exacerbated by the pandemic. The pandemic has actually, so if you look at the view of the Pink Cloud prior to the pandemic has only fast forwarded or accelerated these ideas, not slowed them down. Heading back into culture is occurring, but I have no high need to be socially, highly socially interactive, So all that to say, fascinating movie. I have zero idea how I'm going to write this up or how I'm going to rate it. But it was, for a thinker's movie, it was perfect, right? It forced me to consider where I get my social feedback. It forces me to consider, what is important and what isn't, So hopefully you got a chance to watch it. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If not, I'm with you. I don't know if I enjoyed it either, but hopefully it made you think. And that's the only thing I can really hope for you, is forcing you to delve and grapple and consider. Anyway, take care, guys. Do not walk out. Oh, I guess the final thought we need to think about is, did she live or die? I don't. I mean, I think she has to die. Like, I don't really consider that as it's not a Nolan top spinning question. There's no real. It's like, and if she doesn't, it's like, well, she's a pioneer. She's the first. Like, maybe their DNA changed and now they can go out in the Pink Cloud. Or the pink drink made it available to them, right? They can go outside. What the hell was the pink drink? I don't really, that part, that end of it, that's more into the physical and the science of the movie, and I don't think the movie was really trying to really grapple with that. But regardless, I think she has to have died, or she became immune to the Pink Cloud because of the pink drink, and that would be stupid. That would be a stupid ending. But regardless, fascinating movie. Hope you guys are doing well. See you next time.